What's up, y'all? How are y'all doing on this Tuesday? Um, Today we want to talk about the problem with ethics, the problem with morality. You know, I had a conversation with one of my philosophy professors yesterday, and she was talking about how so with this particular class that I'm taking with her, it's late modern philosophy. We're talking about Immanuel Kant and David Hume, and it's a lot more, as she put it, theoretical, as opposed to other classes. And the fact that it's theoretical makes it one of the harder classes that philosophy has to offer. But the reason, again, why she says that it is so uh, hard, right? Why this is one of the harder classes is because it is more theoretical. It's unlike other philosophy classes, the more popular philosophy classes where people want to talk about things like the good life. Uh, they want to do in these philosophers' perspectives of what the good life is, as opposed to, or right, like their ethical or moral frameworks, as opposed to the more, again, theoretical stuff. And again, as she put it, right, like she put it more theoretical stuff. And I guess that's more appropriate to call it theoretical versus the ethical, but it's really all theoretical. And regardless, though, when she called it, the ethical stuff, talking about this is the ethical stuff is, easier to deal with. People think that that stuff is easier to deal with. I was like, like that's small stuff, like that's small crumbs, ethics, morality. In my perspective, and I really think that if we really looked at it in general, right, and we're just really honest with ourselves, ethics is easily the most overrated and I would say insignificant part of philosophy. If we're going to make the branches between ethics, metaphysics, epistemology, and ontology, if we're going to make that separation, um, ethics is easily the most overrated and insignificant. I'll even go as far as to say most damaging, of the topics because, I would say the greatest mistake that people make when it comes down to so-called ethics. I might just charge my phone, put my phone on the charger real quick. Is that ethics? Ethics actually just branches out as a natural form of philosophy, uh, as everything else does, right? Because when we're talking about our love for wisdom, right? Our love of wisdom with philosophy, you have, well, the things that we can know, which is our knowledge. We have um, the things that, like, talking about what it is to be a human being in the midst of, gaining knowledge or having knowledge around us, things to accumulate knowledge from, as well, having knowledge of ourselves as well through the ontology. You have the metaphysics, which is, again, our ability to look beyond ourselves, and also, again, right, like the knowledge of ourselves, and stuff like this, to project ourselves into other situations and hope to increase ourselves in those routes. And of course, through all of these, again, there's ethics because, again, there's so many of these different boundaries or these routes that we can go into. Some of them may seem treacherous, some of them may seem a bit lofty, or whatever the case may be. And more or less, somewhere what gives philosophy its um luster, its strength, its power, its relevance, I would say its authority, its meaningfulness is the fact that it's an irrevocable part of our experience, Let me make sure that you guys are hearing me here because my big old fat old microphone is right over here and I don't know how much of it's picking up, but um, you know, so I say this to say that I don't, I'm not saying that ethics is irrelevant to philosophy, but rather that, you know, ethics in itself is like they emerge from the decisions that we're making anyway with the knowledge and stuff like this or the wisdom and stuff that we extract. And this is why again it's so important in my book Judgment Day where I'm asking you this question, right? I'm asking you the question of what do you want out of your world? Because I've noticed this recurring pattern with people who have apparently been in the position to talk about ethics and morality and stuff like this, to make it this mainstream conversation or whatever. And, you know, I see that they are very insensitive. They are very, very insensitive. People in general are very insensitive to the multitude of backgrounds, of circumstances, and just generally types of people. You know, when the professor and I were talking about why she believes the more theoretical subjects in philosophy are difficult, is I offered some feedback, which is really this idea that, you know, the particularity with which or the meticulousness by which we choose the words, to use when we go in and evaluate the students. So if we're going to go in and evaluate, for example, your understanding of, I don't know, Hume or Kant's perspective on personal identity or their their beliefs on their thoughts on what causation is, or what causality is and stuff like this. When you go to create tests, quizzes, evaluations of the students to make sure that they understand, it's very easy to get caught up in making sure that they say precisely the words that you want them to say, right? Or precisely the words that you want them to know. And more or less, these words, it's understandable how these words would come about from the authors themselves, right? So like the author themselves could make the statement of, well, they're talking about synthetic a priori knowledge, or they're talking about something coming from a posteriori knowledge or whatever. That's fine. Plus, these are common terms in philosophy, or common things that we talk about, subjectivity versus objectivity and stuff like that, which already is a muddled enough topic as it is in philosophy, and just far too over discussed. It's a very saturated conversation between what a subject is and what an object is. But anyway, in talking about these things, we get so caught up in the precise words that are being said, as opposed to being sure that we actually understand what each other is saying. And so there's a primary reason why I understand that this is a problem, why I see this as a problem, and why I understand this to be a problem, and that is that, you know, I mean, when you're actually in a university setting or in a college setting, and you're going and you're taking these different classes, you will come to notice, especially in the lesser popular fields, such as in my case, I've taken four different majors. I've taken psychology, I've taken music, I've taken philosophy, and I've taken media and cultural studies. And the vast majority of the time for the classes that correspond directly to the major, most of the students who are in that class do not belong to the major, you know? And it's understandable how, right? So, because for somebody like me, who, for example, in the realm of philosophy, somebody who has been reading philosophy, who has been taking philosophy seriously, who enjoys philosophical conversations, I had already read the Bible, I've already read the Republic, I've already read various works from, come on, Marcus Aurelius. I know these, I know about Thales, I know about Epictetus, I know about, Epicurus, hedonism, stoicism, all of these different sorts of things, and can have these certain sorts of conversations. There is a certain sensitivity that has to be had for people who indeed have not had these conversations or not been exposed to, these different people. Especially considering that in our society in general, we don't set that precedent that people should know, or these names or these works or whatever that people should know, as a matter of being in our society. And you know, so like I said, there's that level of sensitivity that has to be had in terms of understanding, oh, okay, well, I have to back myself up in the same way that a professor has to back themselves up by not just assuming that people have a certain knowledge already of, whatever it is to be discussed. Especially in knowing, like I said, that different people come from different backgrounds and thus have different understandings anyway, right? There different interpretations, different processes, for how they, you know, take things in. And so the fact that most people aren't in these classes, and you have to do this sort of a stepping back thing, there's already bound to be that gap, right? That sort of gap in understanding of what the conversation of like the quality of the conversation, or the yeah, I'll say the quality of the conversation. And you know I mean if anything, that makes the conversation that much more difficult, like I said, to deal with, because, like I said, when you want to get so meticulous about what words are being used, and for, most of the people who are in the classroom who've never even been near like the contexts that would introduce the words, and stuff like this, then you have to, like I said, you have to understand that there's a sort of a sacrifice that has to be made, like I said, in terms of the quality of the conversation, in the first place. And um, but like I said, right, that doesn't take away the fact that these people still, the system has been created for people to consider themselves to be so-called formally educated, or sufficiently educated, or whatever. And you got to get them through. You got to get them through. Um, Now, with like I said, in this meticulousness of the conversation of how to evaluate students when it comes down to these things in the realm of ethics, this gets particularly difficult. But that's why with ethics, they are so able to just get away with, you know like it's so much easier to just round it about. If we're going to talk about the good life, or if we're going to talk about what is evil, right? Radical evil. Because people like that. People like that. You got people taking terrorism classes. You got people taking gang violence classes. You got people taking, like I said, evil classes, the good life classes, and all of this type of stuff. And they're doing it because it's easy. They're doing it, or they think it's easy. They hope it's easy. These are things that they, just understand. And not to mention, as well, there is a sort of ambiguity when it comes down to the labeling of some of the classes. Like I said, even the late modern philosophy class that I'm taking, it's just called late modern philosophy. The title doesn't get into, what it is that we're, actually talking about in the class. You don't really know until you're in the class. You don't even know that you're talking about Immanuel Kant and David Hume. But when it comes down to, you know, like I said, these ethics classes, it's a lot easier to, I would presume, quite easily, round, or estimate the quality of the conversation that is that is being had. Because again, it's an ethical thing. You're not gonna, if anything, you're already gonna like play around this whole idea of what good is or what evil is and yada 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 and try to be as like offhand with that as possible. Everything is lolly lolly lolly. But like I said, when it comes down to people who do this conversation surrounding ethics, they tend to abandon the fact that, or ignore, neglect the fact that people come from different backgrounds and say things differently, or just view things and see things differently. I think one of the easiest examples that I can use to show this is Immanuel Kant's second formulation, which is him saying, to not use people as a means or not merely as a means to an end, but to always use people as an end. There are so many different ways that people process that his second formulation, primarily off of the fact of just how it's worded. Just because of how it's worded, they go, oh, they move words around. Oh, he said only, he said merely, and we're gonna move it and we're gonna try to take, but you know, that's the power of, the words and the power of, really like because he intentionally said it in the way that he did. Um, Obviously, and as well within context. I mean, you can easily just read, Kant's groundwork on the metaphysics of morals, on the metaphysics of morals. Um, to get the full context of where he said that. But regardless, like I said, people go ahead and they pick apart and they choose because they think that they are being sensitive. They think that they are being empathic. They think that they are being considerate or compassionate of you know for people's ears, right? Or for what they observed, so that they don't misconstrue what the topic is. And with this, of course, what winds up happening is not only do these people wind up trying to grab some glory for themselves, but it actually overshadows the work that has already been done by this person before them that even brought them to be able to have this way in which they can articulate this thought, this or that particular thought. And then, like I said, what happens as well in that is that there are other people who could really be helped by the original words, or just like I said, when the encountering of knowing that, oh, there's somebody who's already spoken about this, and they get completely their encounter, right? Or you trying to take your Bible study version, your annotated version of what this person said, and and try to make other people feel as comfortable as possible, you know. Um I'm compelled to speak about the state of sports right now. If we talk about the state of sports right now, where we have there's a show, It Is What It Is, that I just absolutely love. Um Cameron and Mace and Maurice Claret, Treasure Wilson, these people there was an episode where they talked about the quality of sports at the moment, right? And Maurice Claret has been someone who has put together this he has been one of the people who has been helping to transform the sports world into what it is now, literally in terms of the types of personalities and characters that come into the sports world, right? Because they're like, we don't want niggers, we don't want ghetto people, we don't want people who have come from certain backgrounds because we don't like all of the whatever blah 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 that comes with it. But it tends to be these people who have come from these rougher backgrounds, or these people who come from whatever, just like these people come from certain circumstances that feel the type of person that they are to strive to be the type of thing, that they want to be. And these people from, because everybody from all their different backgrounds shining in their glory, doing the things that they do can inspire people in other places to do things because we do witness the glory of God. We do witness God's glory. We do witness, greatness in its capacities. And so what has wound up happening is in the sports world, because you now you're intentionally going ahead and you're going and you're getting these other softer people who don't have these tougher, more competitive backgrounds and all of this type of stuff, or appreciating the spirit of competition, et cetera, et cetera. And these people are really followers, right? These people are really the followers. They're the observers. They're not as entertaining. They're not as dope. They're not as great. And you also notice other places where they're flawed, even personally, right? Because you have the person who's also beyond just the profession. It's not just, you know, oh, I just play football and, catch me at any time. I'm always playing football. No. Um, so and this has been quite damaging, and it is quite damaging. And until we fix this sort of thing, we're going to continue to have mediocrity in our sports. We're going to continue to have mediocrity in our environments. We are making the deliberate decision, or we have been making the deliberate decisions in our society of this or that we decide that we want to have in our society. And by the way, who we is these people who are whatever at the top or feel like they're above because whatever they've played the game in this or that way or been able to manipulate things in this or that, way and stuff like that. And, yeah, I mean, on one hand, you can try to say that, oh, well, it's because they do this or because they do that. A lot of time, it doesn't have to be about what you do or what you have. I know I have homies who are rich because of, one lawsuit. You feel me? There are homies who have plenty of resources because, they just were just born into the right family. You feel me? You know, there or you know, like I said, people have their circumstances, and then you just take a look at the resources that you have and you witness how other people value those resources, how other people look at those resources, and then you can just manipulate your way through by simply playing into the fact that most people are slaves. Most people are zombies. Most people don't think for themselves. They rely on other people for what is so-called right or what is wrong, and it's even less about the reliance on other people. It is about the fact that they are idolizing particular objects, like they are idolizing things, um and so those values that they place on things, and the values that we place on things really in general, become the things that paint our so-called reality. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, until people strengthen themselves, right? Um, it's gonna continue to be that way. But in the meantime, though, right, if you want to have an ethical conversation about that for real, because people think that the ethical conversation surrounding that, should be something like, oh, well, uh, money is bad or idolatry is bad or whatever. And yeah, whatever, idolatry is bad or whatever the case may be, right? Or being a slave to or enslaving yourself in the meantime of knowing that you have your own autonomy and people do strive for their own autonomy. That is part of the goal or part of the reason for, making this acknowledgement in terms of having this conversation surrounding ethics, like I said, just philosophy in general. um like I said, people want to have that conversation about their autonomy, but not everybody like we cannot choose um what other people do about their autonomy. If somebody falls into the pit, if somebody falls into the pit and hurts themselves from um sacrificing their autonomy in exchange for you know idolizing some object, um trying to please someone else, or whatever the case may be. Um, we cannot, you know, uh, constantly sacrifice our own integrity, in exchange for the fact that they sacrifice their own integrity. Like we can't do that. We have to accept the fact that look, there are always going to be people who don't make the right decisions. I just made a post yesterday. I had said, I said, there are so many people who are so much more focused on um getting in trouble, that or things going wrong, that they neglect to do the right thing in the first place, you know? And so, you have philosophers who say this thing about, know yourself, get to know yourself and yada, yada, yada. And but we don't talk about how we actually get to that place of knowing oneself, right? Like, how does one get to know oneself? The way that you get to know yourself is by accumulating information about the things that you're interested in. And as you go about and gather information about the things that you're interested in, which would, by the way, include and would have to include sustaining your life, protecting your life, things of that nature, those really basic fundamental things, because as I speak about, if you don't appreciate your life, if you don't want to have your life, then you should go ahead and end it. It should be taken away from you. That's not a this and this isn't even this shouldn't be new. As long as you continue to possess the life, then you wish to have the life. So anyway, accumulating knowledge about those things that you were interested in, you will come to see and realize these different things that these various authors, just philosophers, people, we're all philosophers, really, that's one of the base things that you'll learn. We're all philosophizing, really. I mean, we're not, after all, we're not, we would be or could be and would or could still be philosophizing even in the midst, because that is part of the point of the emergence of philosophy. It is the acknowledgement that there is more to us than just you know, uh, our ability to hunt and our carnality, or us to just have sex and to eat and to hunt, fight, kill, all these different types of things. Um, like I said, there's so much more to us. You'll by going out and accumulating that information and learning these different things about yourself, you will realize truly, by far, you are not the only person in the world who thinks the things you do, who can think the things you do, or thinks of things in general, that are useful or that are important, and that you can learn from. And because of that, we'll constantly meet in the middle. We'll constantly meet in the middle together out of this understanding of, oh, yes, boom, we are here together and we can share knowledge and knowing, that yes, we are sharing this world and we are thinking about this stuff, doing these things at the same time. We don't need, the point that I'm making with all this is that we don't need ethics to do that, particularly to say what ethics is or to try to create an ethical or moral framework. Because again, people are going to choose to do whatever they want to do anyway, you know? And more or less, we can estimate, you know, where somebody wants to go, what somebody is trying to do, whether or not we want to have this or that type of energy around us, to begin with. And so the decision has to be made. The decisions have to be made. What is the world that you want to live in? You know what I mean? Because you can easily find that. Like you can easily find that, or we can easily find that simply based off of our uh mutual superpower, which is communication. Man, and that's like one of the other beautiful things, like we have managed to create communication in more ways than just through sound or through the mouth. You know what I'm saying? Like there we are so great. We have done so much to meet each other, to reach these points of understanding. And at the end of the day, like I said, what is one of the main things that we have to understand is that different people come from different backgrounds and circumstances, and so they're going to interpret things differently than other people. However, it does not mean that, we have to be separate, or, we're just whatever, enemies, or we can't be in the same place, or that we're not understanding the same things, that we don't have the ability to understand the same things. What it really boils down to is the decisions that we are making with one another. It's the decisions that we are making, you know what I'm saying, with one another. And you can get a summation of the type of decisions that people make, because there are mad people who would go around and would say, oh, yes, it is a terrible thing to objectify women, or it is a terrible thing to, believe that any one human can control another human being. But yet, they would go on and continue to sacrifice their own autonomy, their own, capacity to make decisions in exchange for, something that they idolize. Money, women, validation, social attention. You know what I'm saying? Um, and if you want to live that sort of contradictory life, which is inconsistent with the things that right? Or that, you say that you can agree with or that you understand, as being wrong or whatever the case may be, um, then you can make the decision to go ahead and live that life and to be that type of person. But, not everybody is like that either. Some people do make decisions that are consistent with their values. And then there are also people who deliberately make the decision to be irresponsible or to be ignorant, to be neglectful and stuff like that. Look, um, and this is the only place where I agree with people about the realm of inclusivity. Oh yeah, we can be inclusive in terms of allowing space for different things to be able to manifest, especially because we learn different things from people based off of their different backgrounds in the first place. These Their circumstances and the things that they extract from them are the things that help to make them useful for us and help us to learn and understand things a lot better. Certainly because just because I make the choice to be over here and do this thing, right? And you make your choice to be over there and do that thing. Like I said, it doesn't mean that we can't understand, each other in the middle and understand things about ourselves, like I said, in the meantime, based off of these different decisions. Finite playing with deterministic laws, right? Again, I speak about it in the good book. Uh, I really do implore you guys to get you one of these, man. Definitely, definitely. Oh, you can't even see it, but yeah, this book, Judgment Day. Yeah, definitely get you one of these. It's also on Amazon Kindle where we're talking about these things. But yeah, man, like I said, we can learn from one another, regardless of where we come from. The issue, though, is where, like I said, you're trying to cross boundaries and you're trying to tell people how to live their lives. The best route, like I said, and again, it is this route, that I am taking. You can call it a middle way, or you can call it a silver lining, you can call it the gray, whatever. But uh, if we truly respect different people's perspectives, different people's backgrounds, if we truly respect the multitude, and have gratitude for life, then we appreciate the works that have been done before us, which is being exposed to the fact that, like I said, there have been people already who have lived these lives and have thought about and done things before we did them. And truly seeing just how much we connect with one another, just how much we truly relate to one another. And then from there, what you have is just the decisions that you make beyond that, you know? Um, So yeah, the problem with ethics right now is, like I said, people is that the people who want to have this conversation surrounding ethics are impeding way too much into other people's livelihoods. They feel like they can pick out, what the good man is, or what evil is, or about what it means to be ethical, or what it means to be moral. And meanwhile, these people are just as flawed. These people have their own easy, flaws. They live all up in this, theoretical, lofty, psychological world, but yet they are really not grounded in the reality, of this physical world, and they don't really respect the multitude, and they're not really open to hearing, the multitude of perspectives, and it's very dangerous. And it is not until we, get that straightened up that, well, we're going to continue to give credence to this subject, morality, that is morality, ethics, um, which is not as valuable or important as, it is being made out to be. and people are way too concerned, excuse me, with this idea of trying to live within other people's ethical frameworks, as opposed to, like I said, just going out there and learning a thing or two and coming to understand, truly what their world is made of, and just seeing the good that is, the work that has been done, and thus the work that they can do as well, and improving themselves. So, yeah, that's what you can get from this video. Um, I really do not like ethics. I don't like the subject of ethics, especially considering, like I said, the fact that it isn't really as they're not really willing to have the sorts of conversations that really need to be had. It's being gatekept um, by people who don't really know what they're talking about, by people who think that they can speak for everybody. Um, And yeah, get you a copy of Judgment Day. The link is in the description. And y'all stay blessed, man. Y'all stay blessed. Those are theirs, let them hear.